Hello. Like many of you, I love electrical vehicles, and I've put myself on the list for the Toyota BZ4X, and that is coming up. And I thought what I'd do is, since they've just announced it, I thought it'd be fun if we could go through the different trims together and talk about my experience with the RAV4 Prime, which was the plug-in hybrid. So it's sort of an intermediate step to full electrification, and why not? Let's go into it. So I'm actually on the US site right now. I'll switch back and forth between Canada and the US. It's interesting how they're not naming the trims the same name, even though, I mean, we share a border and a lot of these will be going back and forth. So regardless. So let's take a look. So what we've got here is the first picture, I guess, of the BZ4. And of course, this stands for Beyond Zero. It's this is actually a car, or an SUV more specifically, that is jointly created with Subaru. So you'll find a very similar looking vehicle, SUV, over at Subaru. I'm going to talk strictly about the Toyota today, but please assume that 98% or well, I don't know what the percentage would be, but a very high percentage of the SUVs are exactly the same. And especially if you go into the all-wheel drive, you'll notice that the all-wheel drive of the Toyota is branded, and it's either co-developed or is actually from Subaru. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. I mean, to me, it looks very close to the RAV4. Now, why would I personally want to go from a RAV4 if I've got to plug in to this? Well, keep in mind that the RAV4 Prime really has a limited range. So if anybody's going to go, I do a lot of kilometers or a lot of mileage. So what I want to do is I want to have something that I can be electrical all the time. Now, the biggest challenge mentally being up north to going electric is the winter. The autonomy goes down tremendously as the batteries get cold. So when we've got, if you're in Vermont, upper New York, I mean, just any of the upper states where there's a lot of cold fronts in the winter, if you're up in Canada, specifically out east, you're going to notice that your range will substantially get reduced in the winter. How much does it reduce? Well, sometimes it's 50%. I guess it all depends on which model and which types of batteries and so forth. But that aside, let's take a quick look. And so what they do is they do show you the pictures of the new BZ4 or BZ4, depending again if you're in Canada or the US, it's Z or Z. So excuse me if I interchanged the two, but that is definitely what I mean. So you've got different colors. So you've got white and the environmental elemental silver metallic here. That's probably what I would go for. There's heavy metal, just kind of a gray. Of course, there's the supersonic red, which I know is very popular out there. And then you've got black, and then you start getting into windshield pearl with black roof. And these are the higher end trims. You'll notice have the black roofs. And so you'll have silver with a black roof. And then you'll go to the heavy metal, which is the darker gray, and then the red with the black. So they all look very good. So we're going to stick to the US for a moment. And what you're looking at in the US, since it's all there in front of us, is the XLE versus the Limited. So what they've done is they've gone ahead and allowed you to have both trim levels in either four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And really, when you go to the XLE, which is more of the base, then you've got yourself smaller wheels. As you can see, it says 18-inch alloy wheels with covers. And if you go into the Limited, then you're moving up to a 20-inch. If you want higher-end features such as the fake leather or the soft tech, as they call it, then you need to be in the limited editions, or else it's not available. You'll have a cloth. The other thing is, what's really nice is I believe that in the US, the main display in the center is all 12.3 inch. My understanding is in Canada, if you take the base model, you will get an 8-inch instead of a 12.3. The wheel, I know that some of the prototypes did not have a circular or fully round steering wheel. In the end, they've kept that. talking about prototype versus what was released, I was also a little disappointed to find that there does not appear to be an option for a solar roof, which I know was debated in the forums, and there were suggestions that that might be an option. Again, I'll go and look more deeply later on to see if that is an option, but it is a nice looking SUV. It's got, you can see around the wheelbase here where you've got a different color, and it really stands out. They talk about the all-wheel drive with the X mode. Again, this is the X mode, if you look it up, is Subaru branded. And now, one other thing is for the charging portion of it, let's jump right in since it's in front of me right now. So you've got the ability to charge, obviously, level 2 and level 3. Now, you'll notice that if you had, for example, like in my case, the Prime SE, basically I had the ability to charge the car in a few hours. But again, the battery on the Prime was, 18, and this one here, let's see, I've got to get to the information since I don't remember what it is by heart, but we'll take a look at the features. And so they're talking about the platform here that it's based on, which is the eTNGA platform. And the idea is that they've created a base, and they will be reusing or recycling this as much as they can to obviously save money, and to, as they improve the platform itself, it will benefit all the future vehicles. And what's nice about the EVs is because the batteries are on the very bottom, the center of gravity is low. There's still a high clearance on this SUV compared to comparable models. It's pretty high up. And again, I'll have to look at the specs, but if you're living somewhere where there's a lot of snow, where there's a lot of, the roads are not quite as nice, it does give you a bit more space underneath the car, potentially, preventing you from having damage to the undercarriage or to the battery, because that would be terrible if you damaged the battery. So it will come with, what's interesting is the way they've broken it down. So you've got the four-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive. Now the front-wheel drive actually will have more range. So it's a little strange. You've got less horsepower if you want. And however, what's happening is even though you've got a slightly smaller battery, as we'll see in a minute when we check out the specs for the battery, is it's a different battery. First of all, the one for the four-wheel drive is made by Panasonic, and it'll actually allow you to charge faster than the one for the all-wheel drive. It's literally a different battery, so that's why it's got different specifications. Seems weird because the car obviously looks identical since it is. So if you want more range, then the way to go is the four-wheel drive, the forward-wheel drive, as opposed to the all-wheel drive. I'm sorry, I just confused myself as well. Okay, so you've got here an EPA estimated range of 252 miles for the front-wheel drive models and 228 for the all-wheel drive. So you can see right there, it makes a change. There's a regenerative braking as well. So in this mode, literally when you let go of the gas pedal, it will immediately and aggressively start to try to recoup electricity from basically the motion and stopping the car. So that is one way of increasing the range. I understand that this is very close to what you would think of as a single pedal driving. And my understanding is that for legal reasons, they've kept the brake on. But anyone who's gone to electric go-karts or who's played with electric cars as a youngster, perhaps, you'd have a single pedal. You catch on that it is possible to run off a single pedal where the more you press, the faster you go, and if you let go of it, it stops, it breaks, it just comes to a grinding halt. So, I mean, we get used to that, and I'm pretty sure we could, I'm saying the majority of people could easily drive with a single pedal, get used to it very quickly, and it would be safe. However, I understand from potentially liability and from everything's been built on the fact that if there is an accident, they can prove you were pressing the brake or not pressing the brake, and there's certain implications to that, and that probably went into the thinking of wanting to leave both a brake and a gas pedal. Well, I guess gas pedal is no longer a proper term. It would be an accelerator since there is no gas. So apart from that, let's take a quick look, see what they give you from the specs. Okay, so here we go. So obviously emission rating, it's zero emissions since they're electric. So for the electric motors, so what we've got is we've got the XLE and we've got the Limited. They are the same, obviously. And for the battery, trying to see if they can give us the see. So they're saying here DC charging maximum input in kilowatts, and that's 150. And when you're using the all-wheel drive, so it would go down to 100 is the fastest DC. So at the end of the day, when you've got the electric vehicle, the biggest challenge you're going to have, number one, is range. So obviously you don't want to have what they call range anxiety, and I know all the Tesla owners out there have felt it, and I guess it's one of those things where you need to, when you're shopping, make sure that what you're purchasing, at the worst, especially if you've got very cold winters where you are, that you can survive with the range that you will have in the winter. And of course it gets compounded because in the winter, if it's minus 30, which ironically is Fahrenheit and Celsius, ironically you need heat at that point because you're freezing. So you will have things like, and it depends on the trims and depends on the functions, but you'll be called upon to use the heated steering wheel, which I understand in this one actually has the full steering wheel itself heated, as opposed to in a Lexus or even in my Prime, where it's only a small section. And apart from that, you'll also have a thermal pump in there. Now, I'm a little concerned because the thermal pump in the Prime really doesn't work well, or at all, in fact, when you get too cold. I have another video called Extreme Weather. If you go and look at my my Prime videos, you'll see there's one for extreme cold. I describe it. Of course, with the Prime, I've got the advantage that I've got HV mode, which is basically using the ICE or the internal combustion engine. And if I turn that on, I'm back to literally having a regular vehicle, and it produces heat as it consumes, and as it burns off gasoline. So that is the solution for that. So you don't ever have a problem with real heating in the RAV4 Prime. Now with this one, the other thing that they've added, and again, make sure on the trim that if it's an option, or if it's, so not to expect it just because you're buying the vehicle. They've got radiant heat underneath, so your legs and your feet will get warm. How well will that work? I suspected that should work very well, and I think that when it gets extremely cold, I think that will become one of the ways to stay warm. I know some of you out there that have used, whether it's the Prime or whether it's something else, the heated seats as well. So that is another option. Of course, in some cases, like the RAV4 Prime, the 2021, the back seats actually were heated by default. That was one of the, it just came with it. And so mine has that. Now with these, I don't believe that the rear wheel seats, let's say drive, have that as an option even. And so we'll have to go and take a quick look. In fact, it'd be quite easy just to click on build. And then we can take a look, and I'm actually going to go ahead and just type in the zip code here just to be able to select it. And so what we see here are the different ranges. So let's just say I'm going to go with the XLE with the front wheel drive, and I'm going to go with I love silver. I'm going to say next, and there's the all-weather package, so you can go and see, includes heated leather trimmed steering wheel and heated front seats. So that's an extra package in this case. So we'll say, why not? We'll say next. And of course you can go and add some other features. These are really more external. They're all accessory packages. And lots of things. But I'm not here to shop. I'm just more to show you roughly what it looks like. So at the end of the day, I think the prices are decent. Of course, if you're living in the US or you're living in Canada, you will have both federal and state/province incentives to get you to electric cars. You have to be careful with that and make sure that everything does fall into the proper prices and so forth. I know, for example, here in this province, I was told that if you get the highest trim, so what they call the technology package here, which is basically everything thrown in, or most of the features thrown in anyways, you've got the soft tech, you've got the so forth, that you end up not qualifying for one of the, I'm not sure, I don't remember if it's the federal or the provincial rebate. So just be mindful of that you don't I guess get yourself out of a rebate because you've added a couple of extra accessories that you could potentially added later in that case. So that was it for Canada. If we go and take a look, what they've done is they haven't actually added it to the website yet. So what they've done here is they call it, so instead of the XLE for the base and then the premium, they're calling it the L and LE, which is the lower end base. And both of these are actually the front wheel drive. And then when you go to the all-wheel drive, it's the XLE on the bottom. So it starts at 44,990 Canadian. And if you move to the slightly larger one, so as you can see here, it doesn't say anything about the touchscreen display or the size, but my understanding is this one's actually smaller, and then all the rest of the trims have the 12.3-inch touchscreen display. So does it make a difference? I don't know. Look, when I picked my Prime, I was not particularly concerned with things like sunroof, larger wheels. I mean, it depends on you. I've had Mercedes and BMWs and all kinds of cars. I've had leather, cloth. I've actually come to the conclusion that I personally prefer cloth seats because they're not as hot in the summer, they're not as cold in the winter. Again, it's a preference. If you like, I don't mind leather. It's I have my Lexus has leather in it, and it's okay. It's one of those things where it makes a difference to you or not. So pick out what you like. What I really like is the HomeLink mirror, as I've outlined in one of my videos. So I always make sure if I get a trim that doesn't have it, I just add it on. And if that's all I want, some cases it makes a lot of sense. The sunroofs, I know people were commenting, I won't say laughing at me, but were commenting that I didn't want a sunroof because one of my primary concerns is it tends to rust, or it did in the past anyways, with the BMW, with the Mercedes. I would have some rust around, I think Subaru as well, around where the, basically the sunroof was. And sometimes you could end up with leaks, and you can end up with other things that for the few times a year that I might potentially use that, and I guess I have no hair, so I need to wear a hat, and it's just, to me, it didn't make much sense. It's not something that I particularly enjoy. And again, if you enjoy it, then go and get it. That's not a problem. But I know that with the Primes, there were some reports of people with the sunroofs having some problems. I didn't want all the techie stuff. Like for example, I know they have a lot of things connected to your phone, your smartphone. In my case, look, I'm a technology guy. I love technology. However, at the end of the day, to me, too many gimmicks or too many things added for the sake of adding them didn't make any sense. Like if I were to build an app, which I may one of these days just because there's no real app that I see that I would like to use, the remote start, I don't really remote start stuff. In order to, if you find that a convenience and you use it, go ahead. It's one of those things where it's a personal preference at that point. But I understand that the Toyota app is not great. I've had a lot of people write to me saying, it doesn't work, doesn't do this. It worked for X number of time, it stopped working, there was an upgrade, it broke. Again, I have very little experience to it, except for the fact that just from seeing the technology that they use inside of the Toyotas, I don't want to pay extra or to rely on things that are subscription-based that may or may not work well, that really consume more. The car communicates continually with somewhere off on their servers, and if communications don't work or upgrades don't work. Tesla, for example, that would be a different story. If I had a Tesla, then I could totally understand. They clearly know what they're doing from a technology point of view, from a software point of view, and you can see the benefit there. They have the upgrades. You hear about them. You can see people, interacting with it and saying, "Hey, I just got this, and they've changed this." I'm just not seeing that. From having worked with or owned Toyotas, Hondas, the Lexus, they just, it's very static to me. They put stuff in and they seem to just want to forget about it and leave it the way it was. So it needs to work as is. Now, keep in mind that obviously these cars, being modern, will have the Apple CarPlay and so forth. So that should work the same as you would in any other brand, the GMs and so forth, anything that connects back to that. So you've got all the functionality on your phone that you can, basically see back on your car, and you can use the voice commands, for example, to get your text and send text, and then it's just very standard. So to get back to this, going off on a tangent here. So in Canada, the XLE, as I said, is basically the equivalent of the Unlimited. And so what you've got is $54,000 or $55,000 to roughly $63,000, and these will be the all-wheel drive /X mode, and they're really meant for the type of environments that we have here. Now, the big thing, as I said, it's a different battery. This battery set is actually Chinese. It's basically just the motor is slightly different. So really, at the end of the day, it's your LE, the four-wheel drives, have a larger engine in the front, and when you get to the all-wheel drive, they'll have a slightly smaller engine, and then they put another engine, very small, in the back. If you look at the horsepowers between one and the other, there's not a huge gap there, but and even though they've increased the size of the battery minutely, but still, it's on paper, it's there for the all-wheel drive. So it does make you feel like you're getting a larger battery. You are actually getting less autonomy. So the four-wheel drive, if you're going after range, that should be where you're heading. So most likely what we'll do is we'll get the LE, which is the one that's not the very base, but the one up from that. And I think that from a price point of view, if you start comparing with other brands and other SUVs that are similar, that seems to be where the sweet spot is. Again, it's one of those things where we'll have to see with availability. We'll have to see with, because let's face it, I can decide that I want to have a sunroof, and if I have to wait 5 years for a sunroof, so if I have to wait for 5 years to get a sunroof, it's just not worth it. So I may just decide to get whichever one, the first one that comes in. They call me up and they say, "Hey, we got a red one." Even though it's not my favorite choice of colors, I might just jump on it. So we'll see what happens. I know that with the Prime, it was the same thing when I got the RAV4 Prime SE. They'd called me for a black one. I looked at the black one. It was just too black for me. It was black on black. The inside was black. It was just very dark. So I opted to wait and finally got a silver one. Love the silver, by the way. I think it's a great color. So that's the way that goes. So as soon as we get the BZ or BZ4X, we'll certainly make a video of this. We're on the list. I'm saying we're because it's my wife and I, and that's it. As soon as we get this SUV, we're going to make a video of it, and at that point, we'll let you know how it runs and how well it handles on the road, and we'll give you a full detail. We're not associated with Toyota or with any other brands, so of course, I don't have special treatment. But we'll let you know. I know the dealership has been very helpful, the one that I'm dealing with. They've been very good at communicating information. They've been good at telling me where I am on the list. And when I've seen them a couple of times, they're very open to potentially letting me film on their lot and so forth. So we'll see what can be done. So yes, find a good dealer and if you have some friendly folks out there that know what you're doing, it certainly helps to have a good relationship with them. And of course, they are there not only to sell, but to support you afterwards. And I suspect that these products, compared to the ICE products, the internal combustion SUVs, should last longer just because there's less components in there. But of course, it all depends on the battery system and those things to see how well they live, into the future. Toyota has very good warranty, the base warranty on it, and one of the things is they do expect that the batteries after 10 years will only lose a small percentage of efficiency. And so we'll make another video on the batteries, I believe, because there's a lot of questions on those. But at the end of the day, I can just tell you right away that Toyota's basically being conservative with their use of the battery, meaning that, for example, in the Prime, where you've got an 18.1 kilowatt in the battery, they'll only let you use about 14.1, and so they won't let it drain completely. And when you're charging it, they will, they won't let you use up like the whole thing. They won't let you overcharge it, and they won't. So the computer system on board in the car is there to protect itself. So that will give longevity to this vehicle and to most of the components. So I'm Bob Pellerin, CTOBOB. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave us some comments below. We love reading those. Catch our other videos. We've covered, like I said, other vehicles and plug-in hybrids and so forth. We'll see you in the next video.